This week on Business Mike, the business of film. In today's episode, I chat with the team from Brainbow, a creative story agency based in South Africa, on a mission to create organic, positive stories that drive the conversation and spread positivity through film. In today's episode, we chat about their favorite failures, how to find your true calling as a business, and a few tips on how to stand out as a brand. All this and more next on Business Mike.
You're listening to the Business Mike podcast, amazing interviews with inspiring entrepreneurs. For more amazing interviews, go to www.businessmike.com or download our podcast every Monday from Pod Africa.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Business Mike. Joining me today is the team from Brainbow. Could you please introduce yourselves to the listeners?
Hi guys, my name is Chule Gobodo.
Hi, I'm Kutlwano, Makgalemele.
And I am Mukundi, Lambani, and we are Brainbow Conscious Creatives.
Right. So what is Brainbow all about?
Okay. So Brainbow is a boutique creative agency that specializes in connecting brands to African women through branded films and branded stories.
How did Brainbow come to be? How did you get started?
So we met 12 years ago at film school, and we were both studying very technical subjects. So I, Kutlwano, studied cinematography, which is camera operation, and Chule studied writing and directing, and Mukundi started post-production. And so we were really attracted to one another because there was always a spiritual element that we quite enjoyed and we wanted to explore. And from there, we started many, many businesses when we were young. Until we went overseas and did various things and came back and were like, okay, guys, let's start something that is our own. And we can make content the way we want to make content. And so we started Brainbow Productions. We were very blessed to get an opportunity to franchise an international timed film competition called the 48-Hour Film Project, which happens around the world in many, many cities. And we brought it to Johannesburg, and we created over 300 movies in 3 years, short films, in Joburg, in Cape Town, in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, and even Gaborone. So that was our first business venture, and we learned that we don't know anything about business. We were very young and very naive about a lot of things, but it was a great training ground. And that's where our foundation was kind of laid. And after that, we stopped doing the 48-Hour Film Project and focused on creating content at Brainbow Productions.
So then from Brainbow Productions, we found that the production space was very, I think, saturated, and we weren't really doing the type of content we wanted to make. So then that's when we made the transition to become a creative agency. So we realized that our talents are more than just filming something, but we're really great at gathering insights. And we felt that as Black women, we weren't necessarily being spoken to in the most authentic way. And so we decided to take that responsibility up into our own hands and see how we can create an agency that just wants to connect with Black women in the most genuine, most authentic way. And that's how Brainbow Conscious Creatives was born.
What are some of the projects that you've worked on with regards to connecting to Black women, just so we can appreciate the context?
So our first big project actually was with Procter & Gamble. They had lost touch with their hand wash market as Ariel and needed a way to reconnect. And so we came on board to find a solution of what is the most authentic way they could speak to women. And we decided on an online branded film, and it did really well. It's a very beautiful story. You have to see it to really feel it. Yeah. Yesterday we were at the Lioness Lean In breakfast, and we showed the video to the ladies who had attended, and everyone cried. We were very surprised because we had never screened it to a group of ladies. So that for us was a confirmation that clearly our work does really connect. And then we also did the Living Head First campaign with Head and Shoulders Africa with their African hair care range, where we did 10 webisodes on the Black woman hair experience.
Earlier on, you mentioned your technical skills and how you incorporate them into the business. But what about the management stuff like accounting, operations, sales, and so on? How do you handle that, and who does what?
I think, as I said, we were very young in the very beginning of our entrepreneur journey. And we were fortunate enough to be part of the Hope Factory, which is a mentorship and supply development program brought to you by SAICA. And so there we realized the power of mentorship because the beautiful thing about a mentor is that it keeps you accountable. And so someone gets to come in, dissect your business from the very beginning, see that you don't have a costing model, you don't know your finances, you don't know your accounting, or even how to market your company. So we started there, I think it was 2 years, almost 2 years, at the Hope Factory, and it really revolutionized our business. In fact, it helped us transition from being just a production company that was offering technical skills to becoming a creative agency, which is using IP and creating content. So for us, that was like our initiation school into the business world.
And we had to go to school as well. So each of us sort of went back to school, studied different things along the journey. So we had to acquire those business skills because we walked into the business as creatives. Right? And our thing was like, as long as we come up with great ideas, we're going to somehow make money. But we realized that actually owning a business and running a business is a skill in itself. And we need to upskill ourselves so that we can actually do that.
So in the business, Chule is our marketer extraordinaire and client liaison. Mukundi is new business development. So finding all those great new adventures for us to go on. And I do operations management for the company.
Right, interesting. So what advice would you give an individual that's going into a business similar to yours? Say, I'm really good with a camera and I want to start, a video production company. What, based on your experience, what steps would you advise someone like that to do?
Well, we wouldn't know how to advise for a production company because that's not what we are. But to enter into the creative space, I think a lot of people don't take it seriously that you are running a business. It's not a hobby that you're kind of making money from. So the first thing is treat it as a business. Do your business model canvas. Find out exactly who you are distributing your content to, how you're going to commercialize or make money from this content. Do people need it? What need are you filling? What is your value proposition? So for me, the big thing or the advice I wish I had gotten is start at the beginning. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because for us, we struggled for years to just find our value proposition. And we realized that once we found that our job is to connect brands to African women, things just opened up. It was so much easier to communicate and market ourselves because we understood that we were filling a need, not just give us money because we're nice and we went to film school and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a challenge very many people face because you're pretty good at what you do. You assume people appreciate that and just give you the money up front, but that's not how the real world works, actually.
Yeah.
So that's even the business model, right? It's knowing the difference between. So sometimes something is a good idea, it's not necessarily a business. Or sometimes you're someone who can be self-employed. You can own your own employment, but you don't necessarily own a system that can be a business. And so even for creators, it's kind of finding the balance, right? Finding out, am I just a freelancer? Am I just someone who's really good at what I do and I can own my own employment? Or am I someone who can run a business and own a system?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you because with one, you cannot scale. With the other, you can scale and add into what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the African content at the moment. You mentioned that you're creating content that's women-centric, but what about the content that we generally have as a continent? What do you guys think about what's being created by Africans for Africans?
I mean, we are so proud of the content that's being. I mean, 5 years ago, you could barely name an African film, and now you have so much exposure to African films, to African content, even online. Africa is really gaining a voice and an identity and is not scared to take up their place and see the value that we have to bring, So we're very, very excited about, the strides that Nollywood has taken, the strides that other countries are also, pushing towards really making the African story more mainstream.
And I think we're also, just as a continent, we are seeing that we're enough in and of ourselves, right? So we're trying to do more sort of cross-country, more co-productions, more selling to each other instead of trying to convince Europe or convince, the UK or the USA to kind of take us seriously. I think now we take each other seriously as different countries on the continent.
Yeah, I agree. And from my own point of view, I think with regards to storytelling, particularly the stories from the West, it's getting to a point now where no matter what movie you've watched, you've probably seen that story told before. The elements are more or less the same. Whereas with the African content, there's quite a bit that we haven't touched on in terms of storytelling. So there's a huge opportunity there.
Huge opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, right now we're working on a virtual reality story experience, charting the journey of a woman moving from victimhood to victoryhood. And it's our own personal perspectives of that journey. And so we're fusing technology and storytelling to tell an African story.
Right. I've heard you mention the economy of women before. What exactly is that?
So we're in the building phase of what exactly that is. So for us, we felt like the way the economy is structured around the world is not feminized. So it wasn't made to include women in the beginning. And so that's fine. And that system is in place and it's been working for hundreds of years. And so we figured as women, let's come together and create our own economy, one that's feminized, one that has the space in the room for females to actually contribute. Because we read a report that says that because women are not in leadership positions, the world economy loses up to $12 trillion of money that can go into the economy because women won't be in leadership positions or stand up because of confidence issues. So for us, the world is losing out on a chunk of money and revenue because we are not creating or feminizing the economy so that more and more of us can plug in as women. So we've started as a small focus group where we're speaking about what would a feminine economy look like? What would it look like for money to pass from woman to woman around the world? And so we have a focus group and we're growing the economy of women slowly but surely. And so for us, that's the bigger goal, is to create a real economy where money goes around woman to woman.
And the woman virtual experience is actually a testing ground or a stress test of that. So all our suppliers, the supplier for the virtual reality is a black woman-headed company. Our events coordinator is a black-headed company. And the people who are helping us with our social media marketing, also women. So literally physical, we want to see what happens when physical money moves from womb to womb.
Right. And as a business yourselves, was there any failure that you had in the past which you would consider your favorite failure, in that if you hadn't failed, you probably wouldn't learn a very valuable lesson?
Well, they're all our favorites. We love them all equally. We don't want any of them to think we don't love them enough and then they decide to come back and show us how much we should love them. But I think one of the failures that I would highlight would be when we first made the transition from Brainbow Productions to Brainbow Conscious Creative. So we had, so I think it was last year sometime, we had just been nominated for an international award for a production, for something we had done in production. We went overseas, so we got to go to Orlando, Florida. It was fantastic. We won. We got to do radio interviews. It was really great. And I think we thought that would somehow validate us. We thought that the award would mean that, okay, now you're qualified. Now business is just going to come in and everything is fine now. And we came home and I think we went maybe 3-4 months without any business, just sort of chasing business. And the lesson there was that if we don't change anything, then nothing changes. Mm-hmm. And so it was a call for us to say, is this production working? Is this what we want to do? Do we have a why? Or is it just something that we're carrying on for as long as it can go? And we realized at that point that it had gone on for as long as it can go. And so that's when we made the transition. We decided to decide what our identity really, really is. And we made that decision and became Brainbow Conscious Creative. And we've had to work just as hard, but things flow so much easier when you do something with an energy of love. And that was the lesson there, was that we weren't doing things with the right energy. We expected things to work out because things have to work out, and they actually don't. So yeah, that was a big learning opportunity for us.
Right. How do you find your true calling or business value proposition? Because this is something so many businesses struggle with. In the beginning, because you don't have any money, you pretty much do any job just to keep the lights on, but you don't have a core competence or something that you're centered around for your business. So how did you girls manage to figure out that, okay, this is what we're supposed to do? Were there any steps you went through? Were there any people that you spoke to that perhaps nudged you in the right direction? How did you arrive at that? Because it's something I feel very many businesses struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, we struggled with it for years. Literally, we realized our value proposition maybe a year ago, and we had been in business since 2010. So, and our aha moment of what our value proposition is actually came when we were in a room at Procter & Gamble, pitching this production for the Impossible to Possible campaign. And people are going, okay, and then we'll talk like this and we'll do this. And we're like, no, you can't approach black women like that. No, you can't. Whoa. And we realized that people actually don't know how to speak to black women. And all of a sudden, all the experiences we've ever had when we went to go visit our grandmother in Tsokhane, and when we had to go to a Model C school for the first time, all of them became so relevant and useful in that room. And that's when we identified the gap that, no, man, people don't know how to talk to black women in an authentic way. They've decided what we are, and now they're talking to us in a one-dimensional retrospective way. And that is how we found our value proposition. It's been there this whole time, but you know, when something is so easy and so normal for you, you don't think it will have value for someone else.
I would advise anybody who's in business now, there's a joke that was made at a sermon at church where they were saying that the thing that irritates you the most in your life is where your ministry is. And so if you sit down long enough and you just record or see what you talk about or what you complain about sometimes, or something that irritates you that you wish you could change, a lot of the time the answers are in there, because that's your ministry, that's your calling, that's the thing you're here on this planet to fix. And as soon as you realize that, starting a business is great, but you're in ministry, you're in service, you're supposed to create something unique that the world requires. And sometimes it seems like a big thing to find out, but just look at the points of irritation. Look at the things you wish you could change. And sometimes it's small. It's saying, I wish I could remove buttons on a jacket that looks like that and replace it with a zip. That's a calling, is that you want to remove buttons and replace them with zips. Sometimes it's not as eloquent or as big as you think it is.
Yeah. I agree. I think sometimes we make it much bigger than what it needs to be. And sometimes we think it's so specific. So we live in a world that's so centered around self-realization, that we think it's this big thing that we must search for forever. But I think it's something that's always with you. So for the longest time, I thought that my calling was to make movies. Right? I needed to edit movies, and that's my calling. And even when I got to a point where it wasn't something I loved anymore, I stuck to it because that's my quote-unquote calling. But I actually had to investigate into myself and say that's not necessarily... I make movies because I want to love on people, because I want to tell people loving stories. And that's something I can do in conversation with someone, when I'm just speaking with someone alone. It's something I can do in my family. I don't need to be editing films in order to be living up to my calling. And so sometimes we attach our calling to doing a specific thing or being a specific thing, and we don't get to the core of it. And so sometimes your calling might be wherever it is you're working. You have to infuse your calling, or in your family you have to infuse your calling. In your business you obviously have to. So sometimes it really is much simpler than we make it out to be.
If you were to get a magic bullet that would fix a current business problem you're facing, what would you use that bullet for?
A $3 billion bullet.
Yes. That could fix a lot of things.
I think for me it's sales. So it's that you still have to continue. You still have to continue selling yourself and selling to people constantly as in business. You never sort of relax. You're never sort of like, okay, I have 3 clients now. I'm good. Yeah. So it's being able to have the gusto to continue sales, because sometimes it's a lot of like rejection. It can be a very self-deprecating process. So yeah, if there was an easier way to do sales, I would take it.
And just on that sales note, I suppose knowing your value proposition is what is now helping us.
Yeah.
Because we're finding sales not as daunting as we did a year ago. Because a year ago, literally, it felt like black as night. Like, where do we even turn? Because everyone's saying, we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't need that. Because we're just a video technical service. But now when we're saying that we connect your brand to African women, people's ears start to perk up and go, okay, how do you do that? So we're finding sales much easier. For me, I think the magic bullet, if I could get like the experience of Richard Branson, Oprah, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, all downloaded into my brain all at once, that would be really great.
Sounds exhausting. It does.
All right. And the reason actually why I asked the question is because for many of us, when we see people like yourselves being featured in magazines, on TV and radio, the assumption is, oh, they've made it, they have no worries, all is good. But there are actually struggles that, you go through as a business. And even the biggest companies, they have struggles that they still have, which they have to overcome despite their size. So it's always interesting to learn and hear from the people I interview some of the challenges they have, even after they've achieved some significant success.
I mean, cash flow is still a problem.
Yeah, cash flow liquidity is always something you are chasing and fixing and expanding and readjusting. And you have a very close relationship with your cash flow projections and your bank account. So that's something people need to realize, that don't be afraid of your numbers. Don't be afraid to know exactly how much you have, what's coming in, what's not. And just get accustomed to it.
And I think I agree with you that if you don't have challenges, you're probably dead. So we used to get very frustrated whenever there was a problem in the business because we thought it meant we were failing somehow, or we believed that other businesses don't have problems. We must be doing something wrong. Why do we constantly have problems? Until someone said that actually being in business is problem solving. So if you don't enjoy solving problems, then you might not want to be in business because you're constantly trying to solve problems. And so don't ever feel like I have way too many problems. This isn't normal. I think it's perfectly normal, and I think it's what business is.
If you were to have a movie done about your story at Brainbow, and you could choose any actress to play each of you, but you can't play yourself, which actresses would you pick? And as a group, what would the theme song for the movie be?
A group theme song? That's rough.
Wow. Oh my gosh, this is hard. Okay, maybe let's tackle actress first.
Okay, does it have to be a young actress? It doesn't,
No, it doesn't matter. Anyone you like.
Okay.
I like Tishiwa Zikubu because she's my friend and I love her and she's an amazing actress. So I'd love her to play me. Yes, I'm done. Thank you. Took it.
Wow.
I love Jada Pinkett Smith because that's how I'd like to imagine my body will be when I'm age someday. So I picked Jada.
He took it from my mouth. Oh no.
Tracy.
Okay. Tracy Ellis Ross is someone I really admire. I would die if she played me in the documentary. But yeah, she's someone, and yeah, Tracy Ellis Ross. The way she is now, not even any character she's played before.
Just herself.
Song. It'll probably be a praise and worship song, if we're honest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
something from Hillsong.
Yeah, something from Hillsong or from Bethel. You're a good, good father. There's so many songs that we have, blasted in the office on our knees, crying, going, God, are we going the right way? What are we doing with our lives? One of those. People know those songs. Those on your knees, crying. The door opens and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed kind of song.
Right. And how can people connect with you online and learn more about Brainbow and everything you're doing?
So you can find us we're quite active on our Facebook page, which is Brainbow Conscious Creatives. You can also find us on Instagram, and we're the same, Brainbow Conscious Creatives. You can email us at info@brainbow.co.za, and you can find us on www.brainbow.co.za.
Right. Well, it was a pleasure chatting with you, and we wish you the very best with Brainbow.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is great.
Thanks for listening to the Business Mike podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to listen to more episodes just like this one, simply go to businessmike.com. If you've got any questions or feedback, you can reach me on Twitter @DaudiMugabi, on Facebook @BusinessMike, or email, that's Daudi@businessmike.com. Look out for a brand new episode every Monday, and until then, take care.
You are perfect.